Hello and welcome to News Round, a recap of stories that made headlines during the week. I'm Teniola Shibowale with the headlines. National Union of Electricity Employees agreed to suspend strike after a meeting with the Minister of Labour and Employment, Dr. Chris Ngige. House of Representatives Committee on Finance queries $33 million monthly payment for electricity. Minister of Education Adamu denies getting presidential order to resolve ASUU strike in 2 weeks, while striking lecturers refuse to end strike until all salaries are paid. Plus, Kenya's William Ruto wins presidential election, reactions trail announcement of his victory. That's News Round in view. We begin News Round with the nationwide downing of tools by members of the National Union of Electricity Employees, throwing the whole country into darkness. Barely 8 hours after the leadership of the union made a U-turn, suspending the action for 2 weeks. This followed a meeting with the Minister of Labour and Employment, Dr. Chris Ngige.
The issues that we had, I thank the Honourable Minister and the Minister of State for Power for their maturity in handling these issues that we brought up. Yes, these issues could have been tackled earlier on if there was the rightful communication with all parties. But well, as we have said, we've been given 2 weeks to which to report back to the full House. Well, we assure the nation that such crisis will be nipped in the bud before it escalates.
Does it mean that we are going to have light?
Yes.
Today?
Yes, we are going to have light today.
And before that announcement, the leaders of the electricity workers trooped out in protest in Abuja, Kaduna, and some other states to express their anger over some unresolved issues with the federal government bordering on their welfare.
Chants of solidarity songs continue for the second day at the headquarters of the Transmission Company of Nigeria in Abuja as members of the National Union of Electricity Workers protest across the country. The protest, which started on Tuesday, is a fallout of an earlier 40-day ultimatum issued by the Workers' Union in May this year for the federal government to address their demands, which includes the payment of outstanding arrears of some former workers of the defunct Power Holding Company of Nigeria, PHCN. After occupying the headquarters of TCN in Abuja for 2 days, the Electricity Workers' Union took their next line of action as they shut the transmission stations in the nation's capital.
Yesterday, we expect that they would have called for negotiation. They never did. And we have no option. The only weapon we have is our tools. We've done tools. We've withdrawn our services.
We give government opportunity to react. But as you have been told, since yesterday and day before yesterday, they have not reacted. So we cannot just fold our hands and watch few individuals in the country to mess our future up. We will not do that. If they react today, we'll sit down and discuss and resolve all the issues, then we might decide to call off. But if they don't, we'll continue the strike.
The situation is the same at the regional headquarters of the Transmission Company of Nigeria in Kaduna State. The protesting workers shut down this power station, which supplies electricity to 4 northwest states, including Kaduna, Kebbi, Sokoto, and Zamfara states. It's a total compliance at the Jebba Power Station in Kwara State as the protesting electricity workers withdraw their services, locking up the power stations as they fault the federal government's privatization of the sector.
Can we say the privatized industry have worked? Have they added any megawatt to the industry? The government should have licensed people to build their own power station and have their own transmission line where there will be competition. But instead, they sold what we have to their own cronies.
At the zonal headquarters of the Transmission Company of Nigeria in Yola, the Adamawa state capital, no protesters were in sight, and neither the workers here nor government officials are willing to comment on the matter. Is the latest in the series of challenges that have crippled electricity generation and distribution in Nigeria after the national grid suffered collapses 7 times this year alone, throwing the nation into darkness on those occasions.
Meanwhile, the House of Representatives Committee on Finance is querying a contract between the federal government and an investor, leading to the payment of $33 million monthly to the Azura power station located in Edo State. The lawmakers are concerned that the details of the agreements are shady and questions why the Nigerian Bulk Electricity Trading Company would sign such an agreement without the approval of the Federal Executive Council.
The House of Representatives Committee on Finance commences investigation into power agreements between the federal government and investors. One of those invited is the Nigerian Bulk Electricity Trading Company, which is responsible for purchasing electricity from the generating companies through power purchase agreements and reselling to the distribution companies through vested contracts.
You create a link.
The committee begins by scrutinizing the power agreement on the Azura power station.
The records I have shows that you pay $33 million monthly. But you are saying it's $30 million. That's a huge difference of $3 million. But before you sign such agreement, do you get fake approval?
It's not an infrastructure concession.
So you don't need fake approval?
No, we don't need fake approval.
You as MD of MBED and the board, what is your approval limit?
Up till about, was it last year, was 2.5 million for MDs.
2.5 million naira?
Yes, sir.
Naira, not dollars?
2.5 million naira.
Okay.
The committee is startled by the amount of money which the country is expected to pay monthly for power generated, whether evacuated from the Azura power station or not.
How you are committing Nigeria to pay $33 million a month without being evacuated, I want to know. The committee wants to know. And those officers responsible for such an agreement, without bringing it to the notice of FEC, we also want to know. The agreements, the requirements for signing an agreement indicates that you needed justice approval, advice, Ministry of Justice advice. And in one of your communications to Minister of Justice, the Minister of Justice then said, I do not agree with this. It is not in the interest of Nigeria. And I have the documents. And it got back to you, to your office. You then expunged, you as now the MD, then you are the Counsel General. You then expunge that portion that requires you to take each agreement to the Ministry of Justice.
And Attorney General in 2014 raised issues about signing of the guarantee.
Okay, what subsequent? No, hold on. Did he advise that it is not in the interest of Nigeria? Yes or no?
He expressed things that needed to be addressed. But the point I'm making
is that did he advise?
Sorry, sir, can I comment?
No, sir. Answer my questions now. I'm the one answering questions.
He raised issues that he said needed to be addressed.
No, I said, did he advise that such agreement is not in the interest of Nigeria? Did he?
What I'm privy to.
How many years is the agreement, sir? How many years?
Azura PPA is for 20 years.
20 years. Can Nigeria exit such an agreement?
Sir, I have already made clear.
No, yes or no now?
When you are asking an investor to invest $1 million in your country, why would, no, sorry, can I clarify? Why would you exit? There are grounds for termination. There are grounds for termination of an agreement.
The lawmakers are requesting for the records of all power evacuated from the Azura power station since 2018, when the agreement became effective. Terry Ikumi, Channels Television News.
And now to the lingering ASUU strike. Minister of Education, Malam Adamu is insisting that he will not succumb to ASUU's demand for their members to be paid the backlog of salaries withheld within the 6 months they were on strike. The minister, who was speaking during the weekly ministerial briefing at the presidential villa, is also asking students who are affected by the strike action to sue the union for the lingering strike. He also denied ever getting a deadline to resolve the deadlock.
In In the midst of a lingering strike by the Academic Staff Union of Universities, cancelling school for millions of students across the country, the Minister of Education, who is guest at the 47th ministerial briefing, addresses the crucial issues. He first denies that he was given 2 weeks to resolve the impasse, contrary to what his colleague, the Minister of Labour, told the media.
The Minister of Education volunteered and said, give me 2 weeks. My proposal to meeting was 1 week for him to handle. And he said, I need more than 1 week. In 2 weeks, sir, everything, I hope, will be resolved.
It was a lie. The president never gave me any deadline. So you shouldn't start asking me why I haven't delivered in 2 weeks or 3 weeks. Or I know I promised that I could do it within the shortest possible time. The only exception was ASUU that gave me 2 other conditions, which I told them this will not be acceptable to government. But I had to report back, and it was turned down.
The minister insists that strikes are a distraction, and ASUU should not only be dragged to court to compensate students for time wasted, but would not be paid salaries for the period they forced cancellation of academic activities.
Let me just tell you what they are asking is they can accept this if the federal government will agree to pay the salary for the month they have not worked. And I told them the federal government will not. No, probably you should take the leaders of striking unions to court to pay them, yes. Probably the court will award damages, and then we'll see how they pay.
By the same token, the minister announces that the number of out-of-school children in the country has declined to 6.9 million since 2020, a figure which undoubtedly is at variance with official figures provided by the UNICEF and the Ministry of Humanitarian Affairs in February 2022.
The out-of-school children, I will ask my coordinator to give us the exact figures so that you don't quote me wrong, but there are over 10 million of them.
We have reduced the number of out-of-school children from an estimated 13 million to 6.9 million. While we are taking students off the streets into schools, insecurity is sending some others from school into the streets.
The minister further correlates the attitude of northern governors to the deplorable state of primary school education in the region.
I would like to say this about governors, especially in the northern states. It is as if they are looking for power to destroy education at the primary school level. Except for few, I don't think there is any governor who has any good story to say about primary education. Because whatever, as Minister of Education, I'm able to do here will amount to nothing if the foundation of the education system is already rotten.
He also underpins that states can, at their discretion, resume schools next month if they deem it safe to do so.
If people in Jigawa find that it is not safe, probably somebody in Kano is finding it safe. So I think it is for the governments to decide whether it is safe for their schools to open.
Within the last 6 years, the current administration has spent over 6 trillion naira on the education sector, according to the minister, and an additional 2.5 trillion naira intervention by the Tertiary Education Trust Fund. From the presidential villa, Gloria Umezuke, Channels Television News.
Meanwhile, the striking university lecturers have resolved not to end their action until all the backlog of their salaries are cleared by the government. The president of the Academic Staff Union of Universities gave this position in a statement, explaining that even if other issues in dispute are resolved, the lecturers will not go back to the classrooms unless they are fully paid. This comes as the lecturers' union has also rejected the recommended consolidated university academic salary structure. The new structure was prepared by the National Incomes and Wages Commission and presented to ASUU during the meeting with the federal government representatives on Tuesday, August the 16th, 2022. ASUU argues in the statement that the unilateral action of the National Incomes and Wages Commission in preparing the new salary structure contravenes the collective bargaining principle established as a platform for resolving such issues. The union says this action is injurious to the nation's aspiration to play actively in the global knowledge industry. And when News Round returns, National Broadcasting Commission revokes the licenses of over 50 television and radio stations. Stay with us. Thanks for staying with us. The National Broadcasting Commission says it has revoked the broadcast licenses of radio and TV stations belonging to Silverbird, AIT and some other stations for failing to renew their licenses. Over 50 stations, including stage broadcasting outfits, are affected, all of which are said to be owing the Commission a total of 2.6 billion naira. NBC Director General Balarabe Shehu, who made the disclosure during a press conference in Abuja, says this is the first batch of defaulters to be sanctioned, while the second batch will be made public soon. Meanwhile, the Broadcasting Organizations of Nigeria has promised to engage the NBC in resolving the matter.
After due consideration, the National Broadcasting Corporation, NBC, hereby announces the revocation of the license of the underlisted debtors and are hereby given 24 hours to shut down their stations or operations. Our offices nationwide are hereby directed also to collaborate with security agencies across the country to ensure immediate compliance. The stations affected are Silverbird TV or Silverbird Communications Company Limited is a network station. Rhythm FM Silverbird Communication Abuja, Rhythm FM Silverbird Communication Limited Lagos, Rhythm FM Silverbird Communication Limited Yenagua, Rhythm FM Silverbird Communication Port Harcourt, Rhythm FM Silverbird Communication Limited Jos is an FM station also, and Rhythm FM Silverbird Communication Benin. AIT Repower FM Direct Communication Limited Network.
Reactions are already trailing the NBC action, with the Nigeria Union of Journalists describing the revocation of 52 broadcast station licenses as hasty. A statement by the national president of the NUJ, Chris Iziguzo, described the decision of the NBC as ill-advised. The statement reads in part, "It should be noted that this wholesale revocation of licenses at this critical time of insecurity in the country appears to be a decision taken without careful prior deliberation, consultation or counsel." The NUG believes that in the face of economic hardship, the large-scale clampdown of broadcast stations in this regard to security issues and the attendant consequence is one unpleasant luxury the nation cannot afford at this time. As other stories, the Minister of Finance, Zainab Ahmed, has put the 2023 projected daily payment for fuel subsidy at 18.39 billion naira. According to the minister, this was calculated using information provided by the NNPC and the regulator. The information, she says, shows that 64.96 million litres of petrol per day is the projected average daily truck out. The minister stated this during an investigative hearing of the House Ad hoc Committee, which is investigating the petroleum subsidy regime from 2017 to 2021.
The House Ad hoc Committee on Subsidy meets with the Federal Inland Revenue Service over tax generated from fuel subsidy payments.
Mr. Chairman,
the FIRS begins by stating that it is only responsible for revenue generation via tax collection and not expenditure.
FIRS do not have the record of what these funds are used for by the 3 tiers of government.
As the meeting progresses, the Minister of Finance, who had failed to honor a previous invitation, joins and gives details of how much has been spent on subsidy.
The total sum of 6.210 trillion, that is the 4.4 trillion plus the 1.774 trillion, was expended on PMS under recovery by NNPC, as well as payment of subsidy to independent oil marketers from 2013 to 2021. Payments that have been made to independent oil marketers for subsidy were directly from the domestic excess crude account through the redemption of sovereign debt instruments. It is also important to note that there were instances where funds were transferred from the Consolidated Revenue Fund to the domestic excess crude account for subsidy payments, 413.363 billion which was provided through short-term funding by the Central Bank of Nigeria.
The Finance Minister also gives the 2023 projection for daily petrol consumption.
The average daily truck out will be 64.96 million litres per day. That's about 65 million litres per day, using an average exchange rate and open market rate of 448 naira and 20 kobo, and then a regulator pump price of 165 naira per litre. The total amount of subsidy per day is 18.397 billion naira per day.
This figure is overblown, and I feel the ministry should have done the due diligence to be able to arrive at the, a relative acceptable consumption rate.
Till next week, as lawmakers look to continue their meetings with the marketers and regulator to confirm or otherwise the figures presented by the Minister of Finance. Terry Ikumi, Channels Television News.
So help me God.
Into politics, 7 years after they were last seen together, presidential flag bearer of the All Progressives Congress, Bola Tinubu, meets with former President Olusegun Obasanjo. The APC flag bearer held a closed-door meeting with the former president at his hilltop residence in Abeokuta, the Ogun State capital. After the meeting, the APC flag bearer, who was accompanied by the Speaker of the House of Representatives, Femi Gbajabiamila, and other party chieftains, moved to the MKO Abiola Stadium, where the party supporters received him and his entourage.
The helicopter conveying the APC presidential candidate, Senator Bola Ahmed Tinubu, and other party leaders, making its way towards the premises of the Obasanjo Presidential Library, Abeokuta, the Ogun State capital. Not wanting to miss anything, party supporters lay wait in and around the Top Hill residence of Nigeria's former president, Chief Olusegun Obasanjo, anxiously waiting to receive their party flag bearer. Shortly after, he arrives, Chief Obasanjo's residence, accompanied by the Speaker of the House of Representatives, Femi Gbajabiamila, former governors of Ogun State, Benga Daniel, Olusegun Oshoba, the incumbent governor, Dapo Abiodun, and other party chieftains. Although the relationship between both men has been a subject of several debates, on this occasion, banters were not in short supply. Before moving into a closed-door meeting. Emerging later, with no indication of details of the discussions, the group then moves to the MKO Abiola Stadium, where the state governor is hosting artisans from across the state. The state governor is happy to announce the presence of his August visitor.
We have planned this event for several weeks. We have postponed it about 3 or 4 times. It was meant to hold tomorrow, but because of the exigencies of my office, I graciously requested that you please bring it forward to today, not even knowing that we were going to have an August visitor in the month of August. You are indeed lucky artisans. This will be His Excellency Asiwaju Ahmed Bola Tinubu's first official visit to anywhere after he won the primaries of APC. So you are indeed very lucky.
Meanwhile, it will be recalled that the former president, Olusegun Obasanjo, has announced his exit from partisan politics. His home, however, has continued to be a mecca of some sort for politicians. And as the 2023 election draws closer, meetings and consultations among politicians will continue with the ultimate aim of getting the necessary support for the task ahead of the election.
A news round ends in Kenya, where reactions have been trailing the declaration of William Ruto as the new president-elect of the country. Some African leaders, including Zimbabwe's Emmerson Mnangagwa, Nigeria's Muhammadu Buhari, and South Africa's Cyril Ramaphosa, all tweeted their congratulations to the president-elect. However, some Kenyans have mixed views as they brace for a potentially protracted legal battle.
After a week-long wait for results of the August 9th poll, the chairperson of Kenya's electoral body declared Ruto the winner of the vote, beating his rival Raila Odinga by a narrow margin after a largely peaceful voting process. But the announcement did not calm nerves, as some senior election officials disowned the result, fueling fears of widespread violence like that seen after previous disputed polls. The announcement also sparked immediate reaction from Odinga's strongholds, with demonstrators hurling stones, erecting roadblocks, and setting fire to tires. In the western city of Kisumu, Odinga's stronghold, calm had returned to the streets after protesters battled police and burned tires on the road overnight.
I'm not feeling good because the results that was being announced has just embarrassed my feelings. Yeah, that is not the way the Chebukati could announce it. Yeah, that is something that is not making sense, by the way.
For Nairobi resident Joe Maina, he sees a bright future ahead.
We are seeing the bright future, considering the promises that Dr. Rutos have promised the Kenyans. We as the Kenyans, we have a high hope.
By contrast, the mood in Eldoret, Ruto's home turf, remains ecstatic the morning after the announcement, with portrait-waving Ruto supporters dancing on the streets.
And that's News Round. Thank you so much for watching. I'm Tenyola Shabuale. Enjoy the rest of your weekend.